Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz Movies. This is the news show that I have decided I am doing and will hopefully be doing weekly. Although I might, if something big breaks, I might like immediately do a video kind of just on that big thing. But nothing that huge in this past week. I'm not even sure if this will be the regular day that it goes out, but I think it's worth talking about what's going on, especially in stuff that's a bit more related to what we cover on the channel, horror movies, sci-fi movies, anything that feels like it's of interest to the type of audience we have. So I'll just get into it. There's some stuff to talk about from the last week or so. Up first, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, which is kind of circling a big comeback because A24 apparently are the frontrunners in getting the rights to Texas Chainsaw. It's not a done deal yet, according to Deadline, but they are the front runners, and they seem to be really desperate or eager to get the rights. So A24 branching out into more horror movies. I think the funny thing to me though is that what it mentions here is that if they do win, apparently the first project from A24 would be a series, a TV show from JT Mulner, Roy Lee, and Glenn Powell. Although Glenn Powell wouldn't be in it, he would just be producing it. It's just this weird trend of like horror movies being turned into TV shows, especially since it usually tends to be prequels. And I'm like, I'm never excited for that. Like, I don't want, the Crystal Lake TV show is in development, and I don't want a movie or a TV show about, Mrs. Voorhees in her dating life on the build up to the start of the first movie eventually, or probably after the opening of the first movie, I'd assume. Maybe it's after Jason drowns, but either way, like, I'm not that excited by that prospect. I want Friday the 13th to be Jason killing people in interesting and exciting ways in creative ways, no less. So yeah, this has been a weird trend for horror franchises, but apparently that's the first thing they want to do. What's notable here as well is that apparently there's been like a lot of interest in getting Texas Chainsaw from like different like sides of things. Apparently there was a potential movie directed and co-written by Brian Bertino, who did the original Strangers, and Oz Perkins would be producing that. There was also meant to be a Taylor Sheridan produced version of Leatherface. So yeah, but a bunch of different things here. Even Jordan Peele apparently took a crack at trying to get the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, although according to Deadline here, that fell through pretty quickly. So yeah, kind of nuts. Like, Texas Chainsaw has been all over the place, and it feels like every time it comes back, it's always a reboot or a sequel to the original again, or a prequel to the original again. And this TV show is probably going to be a prequel to the original. I mean, it may not be. They've not said that for sure. I'm just kind of making an assumption there. But yeah, very strange, very strange. I'm someone who doesn't mind them making bad movies for this franchise. Like, outside of the first one, my favorite Texas Chainsaw movies, the 2013 one, it's not a good movie, it's silly, but I think it's a lot of fun. I even think the Netflix one from 2022 was a good bit of fun. And people say it was trash, and yeah, it kind of is. But it's a dumb slasher sequel, and that's, like, I would take a genuinely good sequel, don't get me wrong, if they've got it in them, but I'll happily take some dumb slasher sequels. There's just a certain level of stupidity that I can get on board with. But I suspect they're going to be going for a serious story about the Saw family with this TV show, if that is indeed what they end up doing. But yeah, so A24 might be getting the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They are the front runners. So there'll be some new version of that at some point in the near future. So cool. It would be nice if the last movie was available for anything outside of just having Netflix. It's annoying when stuff's locked to a streaming service like that. I really don't like it. So same with Prey on Hulu / Disney Plus. It'd be nice to be able to just buy that on Apple or something. But hey, we'll hopefully get that at some point. Sticking with horror movies for the next story, we have some Insidious 6 stuff. We already kind of knew it was dated for August 21st next year, but the news this past week was that Lynn Shay is going to be back to star in it, which does raise some questions about like what it's going to be. Admittedly, because Insidious deals with certain topics, it's possible that it's just using its premise to have Lin Shaye be around. And it's also possible that it's just set before some of the other movies, like the fourth one was. So either way, Lin Shaye is back in Insidious 6, and we also have Amelia Eve from The Haunting of Bly Manor is also going to be in the movie as well. Jacob Chase is going to direct it, and he also wrote the screenplay with Leslie Johnson McGoldrick. What a name, McGoldrick. That's a good name. Who apparently was one of the writers on Conjuring 2, which is one of the better Conjuring movies, so I'm not mad at that. Yeah, I mean, I like Insidious more than Conjuring. You know, the first movies compared to each other. And I probably like more of the Insidious sequels than I do Conjuring as well. But there's also nothing to say that this next one could or should be any good. Like, it's kind of just up in the air depending on quality. I happen to quite like the third one. I think 2's watchable but a bit messy, and I didn't hate the fifth one. 4's the only one that I outright thought was shit. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if 6 can continue that trend. It's also worth reminding everyone that there's going to be a spin-off called Thread, an Insidious Tale, which does not have a release date right now, apparently. But Mandy Moore and Camille Nanjiani are going to be in that. So, yeah. Be curious to see what makes it a spin-off as opposed to just the next one, right? That's always kind of the weird thing for me here. I guess the main Insidious movies are either Patrick Wilson's family or they're Lin Shaye. And if it's not one of those two that are the focus, then it's a spin-off. That's the only guess I've got right now. But yeah, so we're doing more stuff with the further. I do think Insidious has a better mythology than Conjuring, because I'm not trying to badmouth Conjuring. Conjuring's a solid, fun, like spooky haunted house type movie and whatnot. But the whole idea of the further and like the mythology that the first movie built up on, I really liked in Insidious. So hopefully it can be good. If anything, it's just kind of interesting that some of these franchises that didn't start until the 2010s are getting up to number 6 and 7 already. Where, you know, it's really they're joining the ranks of Friday the 13th and Halloween that, you know, got up to those numbers over the course of the 80s and into the 90s. Next up, we have I mean, the news here is really just that it got an R rating, but I kind of just wanted to bring this up because it's amazing that Perkins, or Osgood Perkins to use his full name, he's got another movie coming out in November, November 14th specifically. This is a movie called Keeper, and it's been rated R, like I said. It stars Tatiana Maslany and Rossif Sutherland, who was in Possessor. So here's the basic description as per the Deadline article. It follows a couple as they escape for a romantic anniversary weekend at a secluded cabin. When Malcolm suddenly returns to the city, Liz finds herself isolated and in the presence of unspeakable evil that unveils the cabin's horrifying secrets. So she's going to be pissed at him. He leaves her alone in a cabin in the woods, and she gets something supernatural coming after her. That's bound to be upsetting. I mean, I'm kind of excited for this. I think Osgood Perkins is a pretty good director. Obviously, not all of his stuff is equal. But I think one of the things that he does very well is, if you go to Longlegs, for example, is he's very good at the idea of like the suspense of someone being there or something being there. And like, where is it in the dark? Where is it in the trees? So, you know, there's a scene early on in Longlegs where the main character's in her house, which is kind of surrounded by forest. And there's like, oh, is there a noise outside? And it's really suspenseful for like a good 5 minutes of like, is there someone out there? And I do think that this movie potentially could be a lot of that, based on the premise that they've given us here. So I hope this turns out good. I hope it's good. I mean, The Monkey was a bit weirder and a bit more of a dark comedy. It had its moments, but certainly wasn't quite necessarily what I was looking for from more Osgood Perkins. But I'm definitely down to give this a try. I will definitely do it on streams, if not a release then later down the line. So this is a weird one actually, because the news technically here is that there's a poster, and I'll throw it up on the screen. But we've got a lot of information here about this movie called Hope, which is a sci-fi thriller. Although the poster doesn't really indicate that, honestly. But this is from Na-Hong Jin, who directed The Wailing. And it stars Hwang Jung Min, Zo In Sung, Hoyun, which is just one word. It's a one-word name, like Korean Madonna, I guess. But then it also has some American actors, or well, not all American, but English-speaking actors. Taylor Russell, I believe, is American, but then you've got Alicia Vikander, Cameron Britton, and Michael Fassbender. He's very much Irish, so I just meant like non-Korean actors, really. So it's got like these two sets of cast, right, which is interesting because it does seem to be a mostly Korean movie based on the look of it. The poster and the description. Yeah, the poster is basically just like an image from the movie, and the Deadline article goes into like, oh, this was a very hard to film moment and all that. But I think the more interesting thing for us here is just what the premise of the movie is. So Hwang Jung-min plays Bum Suk. Oh, that sounded bad. Bum Seok. Again, I don't have the accent for it. But yeah, so this character is an arrogant yet duty-bound chief of the Hope Harbor Police Substation. Zoen Sung portrays Sung Kai, a young local who passes his days hunting and fishing. Hyun appears as Sung A tenacious officer who remains steadfast in her duties under any circumstance. Notably, it says they're joined by international stars and lists all the other actors, and they're playing the roles of all the film's aliens, because this is an alien thriller of some kind. So the plot, just give you a description of the characters more than it told you that. There's not a lot giving things away here, but there's a lot of little bits here adding up to a kind of interesting movie. Now, I have to admit, I wasn't that hot on The Wailing. People loved it when it came out. I thought it was a bit overlong. I didn't quite click with it. But it wasn't something where I felt like, oh, the director's not very good. So I'm still pretty interested in their next film. So I hope, is going to be good. And then you have this international cast playing the aliens, which is kind of interesting in a movie that's, otherwise, I assume, just set in Korea. That's kind of a cool idea. So there's a lot of interesting details to this. I'm just curious what the tone's going to be and how it's going to work. It sounds like it's a small location, like a small town type thing. Very curious to see how this one turns out. But this is much like the last one. This was more about, this feels worth bringing up so people are aware that this movie exists, rather than the fact that there's a poster being that big in terms of news. But I was definitely intrigued when I came across this story. So that is Hope. Next up, Vertical's acquired the US rights to writer-director Jess Varley's sci-fi thriller The Astronaut. It had a world premiere at the South by Southwest Film Festival earlier this year. So it stars Kate Mara, Lawrence Fishburne, Gabriel Luna, and a few others. The synopsis reads, when astronaut Sam Walker, played by Mara, returns from her first space mission, she's found miraculously alive in a punctured capsule floating deep off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. General William Harris, played by Fishburne, arranges for her to be placed under intense NASA surveillance in a high-security house for rehabilitation and medical testing. However, when disturbing occurrences begin happening around the property, she fears that something extraterrestrial has followed her back to Earth. My initial thought on reading that is it all in her head. Maybe it's obvious that it isn't once the movie's actually playing, but that was my first like not red flag, but flag that went up there was like, oh, this sounds like it might just be her like hallucinating as she's dying or something like that, and finding out she never really got home. Like that's my like cynical first take just based on reading that. There's nothing wrong with the premise though, and certainly that's a couple of reasonable big names to have in your movie. I don't think it's got a date or anything yet. I mean, I think it says here they're planning to release it later this fall. I'm going to assume that's US only, since Vertical's not a thing anywhere else, I don't think. So, yeah, probably one that's going to have a staggered release internationally, and we'll see how it works out. But definitely something we'll look at on the Atomic Cinema Experiment at some point when it's available. Next up, what do we have here? Henry Cavill has been injured while he was training in pre-production for the Highlander reboot. So Amazon MGM are doing this Highlander reboot. Chad Stahelski, who worked on the John Wick movies and stuff like that, is directing it. And apparently because of this injury, which I don't think is serious in the sense that he's in any danger or anything, but they're having to push the start of production to the start of next year. Presumably it was going to start a bit earlier than that, maybe, sometime like October, November or whatever, but They're going to be waiting a couple of extra months before they start. This movie does have a release date, so I'll be curious to see if it affects that, if maybe they have to push the movie at some point to accommodate for the fact that they started shooting later than they planned. But I don't know, we'll find out. Not much to say there, but yeah, Highlander reboot is coming, so keep your eyes on that. This is a very quick update, but it's just James Gunn casually mentioned this week that Supergirl, next year's movie, is already in the editing stages. They've already finished shooting the movie. It doesn't mean they won't do some reshoots or pickups maybe later on, but they're done with the principal photography, so that movie is already mostly or entirely in the can, and they're doing the post-production now, and they've got a year almost to do that. So I just thought it was worth mentioning. Not much to say on it really, just everything's going. Couple of things to finish up with here. One is not an exciting story. In fact, it's kind of a negative story, and that is that Paramount Skydance, who just had a merger like a month or two ago, are now exploring their options to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. So more potential giant mergers of studios, which is just bad news like across the board, because it's not going to benefit anyone except the people making money at the top here. It means there's less places to go and make movies. Disney and Fox merging was already kind of a crappy thing. I mean, it's not necessarily resulted in anything too bad yet. 20th Century Studios are still been allowed to make movies kind of independently for the most part for the time being. But I mean, we'll see, does that last forever? When they do want to cut some pennies back, is that something they close down? That's a risk. And the other problem is, of course, is that if you get to the point where only 2 or 3 studios own all of the other studios, which is kind of how the music industry operates as I understand it, is that, each one has almost too much power, right? Like, competition's good. And the less competitors there is, arguably the easier it is for the 2 or 3 that are left to just kind of agree with each other that they're going to do something shitty. And because they're all doing it, like, everyone just has to put up with it. Because, typically if one does something bad that's like anti-consumer, the other studios instantly look better, and it almost forces the one who tried to do something bad to kind of, even things out, because everyone's just going to ignore them if they do so. But if all the movie studios are starting to agree to do things, I think the risk is that if there's too few of them, that's something that'll start maybe have. It's a worry I have anyway. So, and Warner Brothers is a huge thing. Like, Paramount and Warner becoming one company is absolutely huge. Like, their libraries, they arguably have the 2 biggest libraries of movies in terms of back catalogue out of any of the studios. Obviously, like, some of the other ones have big catalogues. They absolutely do. But like Paramount and Warner like scooped up a lot of smaller studios back in the day, so they have a lot of old stuff that wasn't originally them. Just kind of nuts. So I really hope this doesn't go through. One thing that might put a hindrance in it is that Warner Brothers are actually trying to separate their company into 2 parts right now. The movie studios kind of side of things they want to separate from all the other stuff. I'll just get the quote here. Yeah, Warner Brothers Studios, which has been in the process of separating from the company's global cable networks and linear television. But the deal that's being explored, apparently Paramount Skydance want to acquire the entire company. So, potentially maybe what will get in the way is they won't like the idea of having the 2 separate parts. Like, they want the entire thing. That said, though, there's nothing stopping them from swooping in and taking them individually afterwards, or just taking, the movie studio side of things afterwards. But no, hopefully it doesn't happen. More consolidation at this size is a bad thing. We've seen it in the gaming industry recently. It just leads to less places for movies to be distributed and made, and less people then therefore having work in the industry. It's all bad news, so hopefully that does not happen. And the final story here, I put this at the end just so we didn't start off on the sad note, but Robert Redford passed away. This was just announced today at the time of recording, probably yesterday by the time this goes out. He was 89 years old, so pretty good run, all things considered. I don't think anyone would be too displeased at 89. He had a very long career, obviously he had a lot of big movies back in the 70s and things like that. I remember seeing him in one of the Twilight Zone episodes in the early 60s where he looked very young, which is very weird to see. I think modern audiences probably know him from things like Captain America Winter Soldier, where he was still working pretty heavily, even just a decade ago, and even up until fairly recently, he was working pretty hard still. So no, very long, very prolific career. He's the sort of guy that I didn't really see when I was growing up that much, because the types of movies that he did weren't exactly appealing to a kid or a teenager. But once you get to the age where you might watch All the President's Men, for example, you start to see him in things. And I think he's got a very... He always had a very calming presence. Like, his voice is almost kind of soothing, and he's got a very kind of calm disposition, which was almost great for when he played a villain, because it was very, like, against type almost for him to be a bad guy, and that kind of worked. But it also worked, of course, if he was the noble character, because he felt like a noble person on screen at the very least. So yeah, rest in peace, Robert Redford. One of the big acting legends is gone. He passed away on September 16th, for the record. So I'll end these with looking at the box office from the last weekend. So weekend, which was the 12th to the 14th of September, the US domestic box office. Number 1 was Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Infinity Castle, which, until I looked at the box office numbers, not today, I looked at them at the weekend, I had never heard of this. It's an anime movie, but it made $70 million. Apparently the youngins love their anime. I've never felt so out of touch with the youth. I not for me, but fair play. It did very well. Number 2 was Conjuring Last Rites with 25 million, building on an already impressive run that it's had so far. The Downton Abbey grand finale movie was 3rd with 18 million. Long Walk debuted at 4 with 11 million. That'll be the review of that on streams will be coming tomorrow, so look forward to that. Yeah, there's a re-release of Toy Story coming at number 5, Weapons there at number 6, 7, the Hamilton re-release, 8 is Freakier Friday, 9 is the Spinal Tap sequel, and 10 is the Sound of Music 60th anniversary release. So, pretty good weekend at the box office, honestly, by like these days standards. Surprise success, the horror movies keep on, chugging along. Looking at this coming weekend, the main thing I'm seeing here of big releases is probably Him, which is not out in the UK for another month, I think. So hopefully this was a fun little catch up on the movie news of the week that was, stuff that I felt was relevant to the interests of what we cover on the show. Like, I don't want to cover every single little news article about some little drama that's being produced by, insert actor here, because I think that would bog things down and make it a bit more of a chore. I'll put stuff on typically that's horror and sci-fi related, and anything else that I think is interesting, probably stuff that's like superhero related as well. And like I said, if something huge breaks, like if something really exciting happens where it's like, oh, I need to talk about this right away, I can do that. There's no reason why I can't. But we'll try and do this on a weekly basis. But if you did like me doing this, if you like having a little bit of a recap of potentially relevant to your interest movie news on a weekly basis, by all means, let me know what you thought of the news items discussed in the comments below. And if I missed anything you think that is interesting or worth me knowing, and maybe if it's super interesting, maybe I'll just bring it up next time. By all means, throw it in the comments. You can, of course, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Check out the movie reviews if this is the first thing you're ever watching on this channel. There's 3 movie podcasts that go out every week. Check out any of those. There's stuff happening. Linoleum went out yesterday on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi podcast. Tomorrow is The Long Walk on streams after midnight. And then this weekend, 70s Thriller season continues on Collector's Cut with Night Moves is this week. So look for that as well. But yeah, thank you very much for joining. Support over on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership to get some bonus stuff, some bonus things related to some of the episodes we do, and things like Extra Reels, which is a bonus monthly show where we review some of the worst movies of all time. So thanks very much. I'll see you next time. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.